Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It is so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? It has been actually a fairly slow news week in the video game industry. We don't have a ton of topics to talk about today, but there are a couple big ones worth noting. You know, if you remember January all the way through like early February, it felt like the video game industry was like non-stop news. We just had non-stop topics to talk about. But that's really died off in like the last 2 weeks. Now, we've had some really awesome games coming out the last 2 weeks, right? We had Elden Ring drop, we had Horizon Forbidden West drop, but actual news topics have gotten pretty low. But there are some pretty cool things that we can talk about today. So what are the big topics? Of course, Elden Ring. We have found out that this game has had an enormous launch in the UK and Japan. Now, we had gotten early signs that this game was going to be huge, right? It was on the pre-order charts on Steam for like, months and months before launch. It had gotten tons of hype during the whenever it was first revealed at Jeff Keighley's show, like the actual gameplay, right around E3, there was a whole bunch of hype. We knew going into it that this thing was going to be a monster. But then we saw the Steam numbers at launch where this thing hit almost 900,000 concurrent players. It hit the 7th biggest game ever in the history of Steam in concurrent players. That was our first sign that, yeah, this thing is truly going to be huge. Now we've got numbers out of the UK that are absolutely stunning. This game has been a colossal launch in the UK. It's the biggest launch since Red Dead Redemption 2 years ago. That's right. Not besides FIFA and Call of Duty, no game has launched since Red Dead Redemption 2 bigger than Elden Ring in the UK. That is stunning. Christopher Dring just tweeted out that he believes, looking at the data, that it's the biggest new IP launch in the UK since Destiny in 2014. Huge numbers for Elden Ring in the UK. And then we also found out that it also was extremely successful in Japan. It was the biggest From Software launch ever. And one thing to keep in mind there, it's the biggest From Software launch in physical units, digital's not included, and digital share continues to rise, even in Japan. Yes, Japan is still a very physical heavy market compared to, places like the US and the UK. But for it to be the biggest From Software launch ever, and, you look back at something like Dark Souls 3 or the early Dark Souls games that came out before digital really had a whole lot of share in Japan, that means it's, with digital included, it's probably by far the biggest From Software launch in Japan. So an excellent result in Japan as well. This is going to be the first PlayStation 5 game to sell over 100,000 units in Japan. So that's, of physical units. So that's great as well. So Elden Ring clearly is just on absolute fire. We're talking about one of the biggest video game launches in years, right? I'm not going to say it's the biggest, but it's going to be one of the biggest video game launches we've had in recent years, besides something like Call of Duty. So incredible results there for Elden Ring. We have found out it appears that Switch 2 has leaked, and y'all, this is actually very, very reliable. It looks like almost assuredly it has leaked. This isn't one of those situations where an insider's claiming to have news. No, we actually have real data on this. So there was a very big NVIDIA DLSS leak about the source code. And one thing that was found in there is a file name with some info that said NVN2. Now, why is that important? Why is that interesting? Well, because the original Switch is listed as NVN. So what else would NVN2 be? And we have some interesting info on that. It appears that this has DLSS, which many of us suspected the Switch successor would have. It has ray tracing capabilities, and also this is a large gap in processing power. It looks like it could be as much as 5 times as strong as the original Switch. So, wow, that is pretty interesting. We can talk about release time frames, any other info we want to discuss on this, and so much more. So for anyone, if this is your first time as part of my live chat, probably not. This is a pretty small chat at the moment, but in case you're not, this is a stream that's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. We basically just break down the latest news in the video game industry, and we do it every week. There's going to be 2 ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, it pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be the super chat option. You just type a donation, whatever you want, it alerts me, and I get to super chats immediately. But don't feel pressured, don't feel obligated to donate in chat. It's just a way to help support me and the channel. Yeah, I think that's it for our housekeeping notes off the top. I'm going to stream for like right at an hour today, which it looks like this is going to be a very small chat, so that's actually okay. I should be able to get to everybody's questions, no problem. I don't even know if there's going to be enough questions to fill an hour, so let's get rocking and let's get going. All right. We do have a super chat kicking us off here with Plastic Hearts Podcast with a 10. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts Podcast. It's incredibly kind, incredibly generous of you. As always, we got a link up for your podcast. I saw that you want me to guest on there. I'd love to, Plastic Hearts Podcast. I'll get back to you. We just got to work out a date. But Plastic Hearts Podcast here kicking us off with a 10. Benji Boy. Think the monumental success of Elden Ring makes From more or less interested in any difficulty options with the game? This is a fantastic question, and it's a big debate online about, right, Elden Ring and From Software games. This comes up, unfortunately, because I feel like it's been done to death. This has come up now basically every time there's a new From game, right? Every time it comes out, there's a huge debate about if there's going to be difficulty options on their games. And From has basically given us the answer for that. They just did an interview, and they said that this is not changing. This is their DNA. Making hard games is what they do, and they feel bad for people that can't get into it, but that's just the kind of games they make. I think that's totally fine. You know, by now, people should know if you like a From game or if you don't. You know, they're all going to have variety. They're all going to have some slight differences, but you know, going in, it doesn't change. These games are hard, right? A lot of times, I would say the vast majority of games, I'm always going to root for difficulty options, right? I think it's really cool that Sifu, for example, is going to add difficulty options to that game. For From games in particular, though, it's not like a one-off. Like, this is every game they make, you know, outside of maybe something like an Armored Core or something, which we need to see what the next Armored Core is. Maybe that's going to be brutally hard, too. But you look at basically every game they've made for the last, 15 years, and they're hard as heck, right? This is just their DNA. It's the games they make. I'm always going to root for more accessibility options, right? So more types of people that maybe have disabilities can play their games. But like just straight up making an easy mode, I mean, would I be against it? No. You know, you see some people that are like die hard against it. They're like, never should there be an easy mode. I mean, if From wants to make one, it wouldn't bother me in the slightest if they added it. But I don't think it's like a bad thing that they're not, just because this is their DNA. It's the games they make. It's every game they release is like this. So I don't think they're going to change, you know. I think most people by now know that those games are brutally hard. We'll have to see how Elden Ring's legs are. You know, it's clear, you know, one thing I commented, I'm not sure if Elden Ring 2 will be able to match Elden Ring 1 in sales. Maybe it will, but one thing that is very clear to me is that Elden Ring to launch this big, that means that this is hitting demographics that From Software games do not normally hit, right? This game is going to outsell Sekiro's lifetime sales in its first weekend. I'm not kidding you. It probably sold over 5 million units in its first weekend. The last sales update we had was that Sekiro had sold 5 million lifetime. I'm sure it's added a little bit onto that, but this game probably has already outsold Sekiro lifetime. It's going to outsell Dark Souls 3, which is the best-selling Dark Souls, probably in the first month. Like, that's how big this thing is. So, clearly to sell that high, that fast, they are hitting some people that they don't normally hit, especially at launch. So, the question is how many of those people are going to be turned off, not realizing what they got into, and how many of those people are now going to be, you know, new converts to From, and now they're all in on From Software games because they get hooked. I suspect it's a bit of both, right? I think there's going to be some people that maybe don't come back for the next From Software game if there's Elden Ring 2 because they just saw George R.R. Martin, they saw RPG, and they didn't really know, and then they, you know, got their butts kicked and don't want to come back. I'm sure there are some of those people. I almost guarantee you there's some of those people. But on the flip side, I also guarantee there's some people that are going to get caught up in that loop, right? People that love From games, it's very rare that all those people were there since Demon Souls, right? Or all of them were there since Dark Souls 1, right? Eventually they got hooked by one of these games, whether it was Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3, or Sekiro, something pulled them in. So I think there's going to be some people that now love From games and didn't realize they would love these games before. So it's going to be a mix. But do I think that this is going to make them like rush out to make easier games? I don't think so, actually. I think they're probably just going to stick to what they're doing. And, hopefully Elden Ring 2 is gigantic if there is an Elden Ring 2 or whatever it ends up being. But, I don't think they're going to specifically change just because how big this game was. Thanks for that super chat, Plastic Hearts. We got a couple more super chats dropping in. Forzathon is back. What is up? Forzathon is back. Yeah, it's good to see you. Saying hi, Benji. Been a while. It has been a while. Good to see you, Forzathon. Seems like Square Enix and Platinum just sent Babylon's Fall out to die. Such a shame. Yeah, it's game over for that game already. Feel like something just went horribly wrong. I agree, Forzathon. I think a big factor here, you're seeing a lot of people talk about this Forzathon. Like, it was sent out to die. What was Square Enix thinking? I think, to be honest with you, they knew this game was a lost cause, and that's why they didn't even try to give it a better release window or anything like that. If you notice, marketing has been almost nothing. That means they were probably trying to save money and market this game as little as possible so it wasn't a waste of cash, because this game's already, I think Square Enix internally knew, and probably Platinum, that this project just did not work out. Like, whatever it was, something in development, something in the planning stages, something somewhere, just somehow, this game did not come together. It's a shame. I hate to say it because I love some of Platinum's games, Nier Automata or Automata. I never even know how to say that. Literally, that game completely floored me, blew me away. Bayonetta, awesome, excellent. But, Platinum is, I hate to say it, they're kind of hit or miss. Platinum has had some big misses as well. A lot of debate about why that could be. Astral Chain. That was another great game from Platinum. I believe Platinum made Astral Chain. So, yeah, they're just real hit or miss. I think part of it is sometimes I think they might be taking on too many projects, to be honest with you. Platinum's not a giant studio, and they oftentimes, they do a lot of license work, right? And whenever I say license, I don't mean that... like they're using giant IPs like Spider-Man or something like that. But I shouldn't use license. I should say contract work. They do a lot of contract work where, they're making a game for Nintendo or they're making a game for Square Enix or, they're kind of going out there and just getting contracts what they can. And I think part of that makes sense because they're not like a huge giant studio with all this momentum. So they need money coming in the doors. But on the flip side, sometimes I think they might take on too many projects and it's stretching them thin. So, Babylon's Fall, clearly it's a giant, commercial failure. There's no way to put it otherwise. This game hit, I think, 600 peak concurrent players on Steam. Yeah, something went wrong. It's a big bummer for Platinum and for Square Enix, but yeah, it's done. Babylon's Fall is a colossal bomb. Thank you for that super chat, Forzathon. Kellegrim with a 5 super chat. Sup, Benji? What is up, Kellegrim, man? What is up? What's your build/playstyle for Elden Ring so far? Keep being awesome, dude. Well, it's great to see you, buddy. There is no build playstyle yet for Elden Ring for me because I haven't even started it. Right now, I'm playing Horizon Forbidden West. I'm going to platinum that game, and then I'm diving into Elden Ring. So those games are both ginormous. So there's no way I could play them at the same time. There's just no way. I had to do one, and then I had to do the other. So since Horizon came out first, I've been playing through that. I'm already 60 hours into that game and I'm only at 50% completion. It's enormous. And Elden Ring is the same thing. I know people that are already over 100 hours into Elden Ring. There's no way you can play those games simultaneously and get the best out of both. So I don't, I hate to say it because you paid the super chat for it, but I don't have a builder playstyle for Elden Ring because I haven't even started it yet. I'm all in on Horizon Forbidden West, going to rock out that platinum trophy, and then I'm diving into Elden Ring. I think I should be able to get the platinum by, next week. So I should be starting Elden Ring sometime next week. But thanks for that super chat, Kellegrim, and great to see you here, buddy. Yay, I'm happy. Chat is getting filled up. Sweet. I was a little worried that this might be like a 30-minute chat, but no, it's filling up. So great to see. Thanks for the super chats, everybody. Diving into some free questions now. Elias Stapleton. Elden Ring is selling good, but the thing in Japan is interesting. It's like an exclusive PlayStation game, right? According to Famitsu Report, almost if not all sales are on PlayStation. Thoughts? Well, that makes sense because from what I understand, almost no retailers in Japan even carry Xbox games physical anymore. And to be honest with you, not only does that make sense for Japan, and I need to have some clarity. I don't know that this even launched on Xbox in Japan, but I'm pretty sure it did. Occasionally, you see circumstances where a game's multi-platform in the West, but is a full-on console exclusive, even still in Japan. I think Elden Ring hit Xbox as well in Japan, unless I'm mistaken. But either way, let's say it didn't. First of all, Xbox doesn't have a huge presence in Japan, though to be honest with you, Series X and S for an Xbox console, let's be clear here, compared to a PlayStation or a Nintendo, it's still tiny, tiny, tiny. But for an Xbox console, Series X and S are doing great by Xbox standards. This thing's selling like now multiple weeks in a row, 4,000 units a week. This will become, there's no debate, this is going to become the second best-selling Xbox ever in Japan, right? It already surpassed Xbox One sales lifetime in Japan in only a year, and it's on pace. It will definitely outsell the original Xbox. Now, can it beat Xbox 360? That's a bit of a tall task because 360 hit like over 1 million units in Japan. I think it was like 1.6 million. I'm not so convinced that it will hit that number. So no matter what, Xbox is always going to remain somewhat niche in Japan, right? It's never going to match a Nintendo or a PlayStation like ever. I don't think if Xbox is around for 50 more years, it still probably won't match those. But by Xbox standards, it looks like Series X and S is going to at least carve out a nice little niche in Japan for them. So there's that. But like we were talking about in terms of carrying physical discs, from what I understand, most retailers in Japan aren't even stocking physical Xbox games anymore. Probably because it's just not worth it to them because A, there's not a huge Xbox install base, and then B, something we can get to that's true of Elden Ring that we're seeing as well. Xbox has essentially become a digital platform. Like, I'm going to be honest with you all, it has become almost pointless to look at Xbox physical sales. Almost pointless. We found out that in the UK, Elden Ring hit 84% digital on Xbox. For comparison, on PlayStation, it was just over 50%. You're talking a 30% gap there, from 50% to 84% digital. This, Xbox's ecosystem has become so digital heavy that it's almost not worth paying attention to physical Xbox games anywhere in the world. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, the Series S, right? Series S has converted a lot of people to digital-only buyers because you can't buy a physical disc on Series S. So that, A, has started to fluctuate that to digital, but it's been true for many years. I've seen NPD data as far back as, the early Xbox One generation that was already showing pretty significant gaps between PlayStation and Xbox on digital ratios. So for some reason, outside of Series S, there's a lot of other debate questions we can have. Xbox in general has just always been more digital heavy than PlayStation, and of course both are way more than Nintendo. But Xbox now in particular, Xbox is close to being like PC, where it's essentially just a fully digital platform. So, but yeah, even if this game was stocked well in Japan on Xbox physical, it still would have been like essentially an exclusive because PlayStation has a way bigger install base than Xbox, and that'll never change. Eber Romero here saying, Benji boy, what is up, Eber? Joe 808. Hi Benji, do you remember someone from a few streams ago that predicted Stalker 2 was delayed because of the Ukraine situation? Kudos to whoever that guy was. Yeah, no kidding. What a prophet. I believe that was Danger Man. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize, but I think it was Danger Man that predicted that. And wow, what a spot on prediction that was. He said that before even, the actual fighting started, before it actually even broke out to war. He was saying, because that was a bit ago he said that, right? I think that might have even been a couple months at this point that he had a feeling that this whole situation would delay Stalker 2. And yeah, right on the money. I mean, Danger Man, I believe it was Danger Man, totally called that. I think we had a super chat drop. Let me hit that super chat. We do. Yep. Forzathon is back. What are your thoughts on Star Wars Eclipse, seemingly now targeting 2027, you're hearing this right, to 2028 due to hiring issues? Is hiring talent a big problem in the industry too right now? Well, Forzathon, this is like crazy. First of all, that they announced this game, which clearly I think the announcement was part of a recruiting process, right? This has happened in the past where someone's announced a game with a CG trailer for a project that's incredibly early. And people a lot of times will get frustrated about that and be like, why did you do this? A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when you see that, it's specifically for recruiting. It's to put it out there, hey, we're working on this project. This is our concept. If you're someone in the industry that wants to work on this, here's this CG teaser. We're trying to build this game. CD Projekt Red outright said, like they said it, part of the reason they announced Cyberpunk so early with that CG trailer like that was for recruiting purposes. So this game has been announced, and it ain't coming out for many, many years. That's right. It might not be out until 2027 or 2028. So is there an industry-wide hiring issues at the moment? Not particularly from what I understand. I follow and interact with a ton of developers, and there's a lot of people bouncing around, going to different teams and stuff, but that's pretty normal in the industry. However, it's really becoming an issue for these companies that are becoming known as being, a toxic workplace. It's no mystery, Quantic Dream for quite a few years now has had heavy allegations against them about the environment in the workplace. So I'm not surprised they're having hiring issues, because you don't want to necessarily rush and work somewhere where you think it's going to be a toxic work environment. We just had Activision come out and say that they're having higher churn than historical, like they're losing more employees and they're having troubles recruiting people. Again, I mean, look at their reputation. And the same thing with Ubisoft. We've heard that they have mass exodus of talents and they're having issues getting people to work for them. So to be honest with you, and I hate to say this, like, this is a great thing. I hope that Star Wars Eclipse, whenever it eventually comes out, is an awesome game. I'm always rooting for games to be awesome. And here's the thing. I guarantee you that there's good people that work at Quantic Dream. It's always rough whenever you paint these umbrellas about companies, just like I'm sure there's great people that work at Activision and Blizzard, and I know that there's great people that work at Ubisoft. But the thing is if you're going to have a terrible environment like this for many people, it's good that this gets out there and you have issues hiring people and games get delayed, because hopefully that means it's going to lead to a culture change. So honestly, I hate to say it, it's a bummer for players that this game is probably going to be massively pushed back from what you were hoping it was going to be. But the plus side is maybe this is going to lead to big changes within Quantic Dream. So that's the hope. But yeah, it's crazy. We're not going to see this game for years and years, right? That means if it's at the soonest 2027, this game's 5 years away. Keep that in mind. This game's already announced, and at the soonest, it's going to be coming out at the end of this generation. We're already a year into the gen. I'm not saying the gen's going to literally be over, but it'll be, we'll be most of the way through the generation. We'll already be... These consoles came out in holiday 2020. We'll be like 7 years into the generation. So if the generation's not over, it's going to be almost over. Like, that's crazy. But yeah, it's wild to see. Thanks for that super chat, Forzathon. All right. Eber Romero. How do you see the legs of GT and Horizon Forbidden West? Miles Morales, possibly 20 million or more right now because of the legs. PS5 stock comes, Miles Morales top 10 again in the month. Could be the same for Horizon Forbidden West and GT7. This is an interesting question because it does appear, and I mentioned this last chat, and I want to make sure that I'm clear here. It appears Horizon Forbidden West has underperformed many people's expectations on how this game was going to sell, at least at launch. Now, again, we don't have hardcore data from Sony yet. So we need to see that before we make any definitive statements. And I'm not definitively telling you that this game's launch was less than many of us thought it was going to be. It does appear that way, though, when you look at charts. Like, when you look at, and I always caution, don't pay a ton of attention to physical-only charts. So I am warning you that. Don't lock this in. But if you look at performances in the UK, you look at performances in Japan, you look at some performances, this game appears that while it was by no means a bomb launch, by any means, it looks like it sold millions. This game has probably already sold millions of units. I think a lot of us thought that this thing was going to be probably not a record breaker, right? I didn't think it was going to beat The Last of Us Part 2's performance, but I really thought it would be in there in contention with games like God of War, with games like Spider-Man, that it would be hitting those 3+ million unit launches. Doesn't appear it did that way. First of all, Sony gave us no PR at all about the game, and it's been weeks now. It's been 2 weeks and we haven't had a single number from them. And also, if you look at the charts, it just doesn't look like the charts that we're seeing that is lining up with something like Spider-Man or God of War. So I don't want to say concerning, but I will say, man, I just thought this game was going to launch bigger. There's a ton of questions about why that could be. Part of it absolutely is going to be the install base. Yes, this game is cross-gen, and people are going to point that out. Look at the giant install base of PlayStation 4. But what we saw with Miles Morales is a key takeaway. Yes, the PlayStation 4 has a giant install base, but it's become very, very clear that a lot of people aren't buying games for their PlayStation 4s. If they want a PS5 and they're waiting to buy them on PS5. Like you mentioned, Miles Morales started actually fairly slow at launch and sales. It did good. It's not like it was a bomb, just like we're saying with Horizon, but it wasn't close to a record breaker. But now, Miles Morales has become the third highest revenue game in PlayStation history in the US. And that's because it keeps lagging and lagging and lagging as PlayStation 5 consoles come on the market. So I hope, I don't know, but I hope to see that out of Horizon. I'm hoping Horizon just keeps having legs and legs and legs, and maybe part of what could explain this not being, a 3+ million in 3 days launch, and we don't know that it's not, but it does appear it wasn't. I think Sony would have given us PR if it was. You might be able to blame it on that PlayStation 5, shortages. So we'll have to see. If you're asking what my expectation is, I expect Gran Turismo and Horizon to have great legs. But I don't know for sure. We're so early. We don't even have one definitive number on Horizon yet. You know what I mean? So it's always hard to talk about something like what our legs are going to look like in 6 months whenever you don't even have one number yet, like a full number. We have some data, but not a complete picture. So we'll need to see that. But I am expecting both these games to leg well. As the PlayStation 5 install base grows, I really think these games will grow as well. Joseph Crank. Benji-Sales. From Software is at their top, man. No question about that. After Elden Ring, I asked the question, what the F is Sony doing with Bloodborne IP? Bloodborne 2 could be a hit, a gen game. The years are coming and the game is trending every single week for some reason. It's like a game cult right now. I don't know, but Sony has to do something with that IP. What do you think, man? I completely agree, and I'm going to say something. The ginormous success of Elden Ring makes it even more unlikely that you will ever see Bloodborne 2 from Software. So this is where things get very interesting. Is Sony willing to make Bloodborne 2 without From? Because I think that's what it's going to come down to. When you have a studio now that's hitting sales numbers like this, we already knew that From Software wanted to be multi-platform. They've openly talked about it. Their main focus is making multi-platform games, right? If you look at essentially almost all their games in the last 10 years, they're almost all multi-platform, right? There was Bloodborne, which wasn't exclusive, but that's the exception, not the rule. Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Sekiro, Elden Ring, all multi-platform games. So they clearly, A, want to make multi-platform games, and then B, now they have a game in Elden Ring that has become colossal. Not big. Elden Ring's launch is colossal. So to convince them, hey, because that takes manpower and time. A lot of people can be like, well, they could just make both. Maybe, but at the same time, if you're making Bloodborne 2, that's going to be a huge drain on resources that you could be putting towards Elden Ring 2 or whatever's next from Software. Do they want to sacrifice delaying out another huge multi-platform game to come work on an exclusive? I'm not going to tell you that it's impossible. There is a chance it could be done. But Sony would have to pay a ton of money to make this happen. Not a small amount, way more even than something like getting Final Fantasy exclusive, I think, costs. Like, way more. Because now that From has become so big with the success of Elden Ring, it's going to be expensive to convince that studio to make an exclusive. Again, not impossible. Maybe Sony can make out a deal to make it happen. But right now, I'm leaning towards From's probably not going to come back for Bloodborne 2. Or if they do, it might only be like an oversight thing, right? Maybe you get them to just give you the concepts, to give you the overall ideas of the game, but I highly doubt you're going to see a scenario where the bulk of Bloodborne 2's development is done at From. I hope. I mean, I love Bloodborne. It would be a dream come true for me to see Bloodborne 2 announced, fully developed by From Software, but I'm somewhat doubtful of it. So the question comes, is Sony willing to make this game without them? Or, like I said, in like a limited oversight rule. So kind of like a partnership, but most of the actual development being done at Sony at one of their teams. I think they have to do something with this IP. I say it all the time in these chats when people ask me. It's a huge missed opportunity. Bloodborne, the original, despite how beloved it is on the internet, it wasn't a giant seller. That's just the truth. It wasn't a game that lit the charts on fire and sold. I would say Bloodborne's one of those kinds of games that has a bigger, like, online talking about it than it actually does players and sales, right? Sometimes you see the inverse, where people don't talk about a game a whole lot online, but it's a ginormous seller. Bloodborne's a bit of the opposite. It sold well. It wasn't a bomb, but it wasn't anything like an Elden Ring or even a Dark Souls 3. So they need to do something, though, whether that is a true Bloodborne 2 developed by one of Sony's teams. Who knows? Maybe you get Bluepoint on that, considering they made Demon's Souls remake, so they've got some familiarity with how From game works. Or, From oversighting something, or at the very least, they need a remake or remaster of Bloodborne. To just leave that IP dead because it's so beloved is crazy. So I agree with you for the most part, Joseph. They need to do something with it. I just think getting From involved in a big way is going to be tough. That's going to be tough, but not impossible. All right, let me make sure there wasn't a super chat. I don't think there was. No. All right, so we're good. Joseki. Hi, Benji. Why do you think Square Enix keeps releasing one or more major bombs every fiscal year? I can't think of any other major publisher on such a streak. Joseki, yeah, it is funny. Square Enix has super become a hit or miss publisher. They've had some huge successes. Final Fantasy 15 sold excellent. Final Fantasy 7 Remake sold excellent. Kingdom Hearts 3 sold excellent. But then, yes, they also almost always pair those big successes with big bombs. If you look at Avengers, if you look at Babylon's Fall, like real hit or miss for Square Enix, right? They're either hitting home runs or they're striking out. I'm not sure what's going on there. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know what the answer is for them. On one hand, I'll say it seems that they just don't really know how to handle their Western studios. And I know Babylon's Fall is something different, because that's coming from Platinum. But it's been known for years that they've been having issues really clicking with their Western teams. I would say especially in terms of expectations. Square Enix seems to always have kind of crazy expectations for some of these games' sales. And what I would say is if the argument is that, well, these games' budgets are this big, so we need to sell 10 million units of Deus Ex. It's like, then maybe lower that budget, right? Maybe you don't go quite so ambitious on that game. Maybe you bring that budget down a little bit and make a smaller game, because they're just constantly talking about, I mean, constantly. Even something like Outriders, which at launch, like that game fell off hard, but its launch was huge. A lot of people forget that. I mean, it sold a ton at launch. They were immediately talking about how it's an underperformance. It's like, what did you think this game was going to be? Like, you thought you had the next Call of Duty on your hands? Like, so on one hand, their expectations, I would say, particularly from Western studios, is grossly just off. Like, they're just off with their planning. So that's a huge issue, and it's been an issue for many years, dating back to the first Tomb Raider. A lot of people forget that first Tomb Raider remake was a huge seller. Huge, especially for a single-player game. And Square Enix called that an underperformance. It's like everything. So their scope and budget planning on their Western teams is just radically wrong. And then B, I don't know. You have stuff. They don't have too many misses out of Japan right now. Babylon's Fall is one of them, but not a ton. I would say most their Japanese development side is actually pretty okay right now, though we need to see how Forspoken does. I'm a little worried about Forspoken, but hopefully it pays off. But Joseki, I would say the biggest issue right now for me, just looking at Square Enix, is they need to figure out what's going on with their Western teams. I think Japan, for the most part, is pretty okay. Barring a few missteps, but for the most part, pretty okay. Dragon Quest has done great in recent years. Most of Japan's side's all right, but their Western teams, they got to really figure out what's going on there. Joseph Crank, and last question for me. Is Katakawa or From Software value has to be in the roof right now? And with this acquisitions, I'm thinking somebody's looking to acquire them or From. Who could be? To be honest, Joseph, I've said this before, I don't think anyone will ever buy From Software. Don't see it ever happening. I don't think that Kodakawa wants to sell or will have any intention of selling. I see some people online getting hyped like, Sony's going to buy From. I think I would put that close to zero. I could be wrong, but again, I put that very low. From really likes to make multi-platform games. They've outright said it. Like, literally, their business plan is to make multi-platform titles. And I also don't see, the parent company wanting to sell them, even with the value being high. So to be honest with you, Joseph, I think nobody acquires From. I really don't think so. Just like I think no one's going to acquire Capcom. People get hyped and, everyone gets on the acquisition bandwagons. And I can kind of get it, right? Everyone's excited. Studios are getting bought. Like, that means everybody's up for grabs. Reality, though, is not everyone's up for grabs. The people, in order to make an acquisition, they have to want to sell. I don't see Capcom having any intention of selling. And same here. I don't see, Katakawa or From having any intention to sell. You never know. Maybe Sony or somebody comes in with an offer that literally cannot be refused. We're going to give you billions of dollars. But I really don't think so. I don't think anybody's getting Capcom or From. Joseki, continuing with Square Enix, I was also positively surprised by them showcasing 4 Switch AA exclusives. Yeah, they are. They're all in on Switch right now. Front Mission 1, FM2, Triangle Strategy, and Live Alive. I don't know how you actually say that. I think it's Live Alive, but I'm not sure. Coming this year, they find success in that space. Plus the big guns like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest that are too big to fail. Yeah, Joseki, I kind of get why they're showing so much support for Switch, because at the end of the day, Square Enix is a Japanese company, and you just look at Switch utter domination in Japan. It'd be a big mistake for Square Enix to not give that platform a lot of support. So I agree, it was a lot. Like, they showed a lot of stuff for Switch, but I think it's smart. I think it's a smart move. If you're Square Enix or Capcom or Sega or any of these companies, you definitely need to be supporting Switch. Like, absolutely. Jocelyn Joe. Benji, when is the Sony report of sales? The quarter thing they do with all the PlayStation data, TV, etc. is this month, right? So they have to talk before that about Spartacus, a showcase. When is this event? Jocelyn, it will not be this month. So the end of the quarter will be this month, right? That'll end on March 31st. But there's always some lag between when the quarter ends and when they do the actual earnings report. I don't know that Sony has actually officially announced when that quarter earnings report will be, but it will be sometime in April. So it's going to be next month. The quarter one this month, but then they have to take time to prepare the documents, to, gather all of the numbers, all of the data, put that whole thing together for investors. So the quarter one this month, but you won't see the results until April. So sometime next month is whenever they'll have all that. As for Spartacus, I think it's got to be close. They got to be talking about this thing soon. I would not be surprised if that's this month. But who knows? But it's got to be soon. Spartacus has to be soon. Javier Macias Leon. Hi, Benji. I hope you're doing great. I am. I'm doing really good lately, to be honest. My spirits are back up, feeling good. I think we can all agree that Elden Ring sales are gargantuous. But what do you think about Horizon 2 sales? Are they a little underwhelming? Yeah, we talked about this. I will say from the data that I have seen, Horizon 2 sales I would categorize as underwhelming. Not a bomb, not a failure, not, oh my goodness, the sky's falling and Horizon is, it's a done IP and PlayStation's doomed. And, you like to see people run with hot takes. Underwhelming, I would say, yeah. Yeah, that is how I would categorize it. Not terrible, but also not super impressive. They're good. They're good sales, but they're not great. Unless there's something crazy happening we haven't seen. Unless this game sold a massive amount in the United States. Like, US is really going to have to pull through for this thing to have like a giant launch. Because it doesn't look like Europe it blew up. So yeah, I would say a bit underwhelming, but again, not a bomb. No one should be like panicking about this, but it doesn't look like a home run either at launch, but legs should be good. Oh, and then Jocelyn also says announcements for Spartacus will happen. Any predictions? What is the possibility of another major acquisition from Sony before this quarter report? Bungie was hours before their last quarter. Hard to say. Again, I would expect Spartacus news can't be far away. I could see that this month. As for an acquisition, I do expect Sony to announce acquisitions this year, but I don't know if they'll be this month. Never know, but it's hard to say. But I do think that you're going to get a PlayStation showcase really soon. Like a full-on showcase. I think that might be... I don't know if it'll be like an E3 size showcase, but like a beefy state of play. I'm expecting that either this month or early April, just because if you look at their release slate, I've talked about this before. After Gran Turismo, which just came out today, there is not a single PlayStation first-party game that's exclusive that has a date on it. Not one. So they're going to have to kind of start talking, right? MLB The Show's coming, but that's fully multi-platform. And Forspoken is a Square Enix game. So Sony themselves, an exclusive for PlayStation from Sony, there ain't a single one with a date on it now. Now the Gran Turismo's out. So they got to be talking kind of soon. I don't think they can wait another 6 months to talk. You always want something next, right? You always want something on the plate. And while we know God of War Ragnarok's coming, we still actually have no idea when. We don't even know a month. So I suspect Sony's going to talk in a big way pretty soon. I would guess either this month or early April. Javier Macias Leon, what do you think about GT7 sales? I think that the positive reviews will help it a lot. I agree, Javier. I think that this will be by far the best-selling Gran Turismo in many years. Again, I don't know about at launch. We need to... One thing I learned from Horizon is we need to pull back on our expectations for these launch games right now until the install base gets bigger. I really think so. I didn't think that would necessarily be the case, but Horizon kind of taught me a lesson. So we need to pull back from going too crazy for these PlayStation launch sales right now until that install base grows a bit more. But like long term, ain't no doubt in my mind that GT7 is going to sell a lot better than Gran Turismo Sport and a lot better than Gran Turismo 6. At least those two games, it's going to sell a lot more than those. Way better reviews, way better, it has like a ton of single-player content, which Sport didn't have really. It was mostly online focused, so this will get single-player sales as well as multiplayer sales. So, yeah, it's going to sell really good. Who knows if it'll sell... better than 4 and 5. That I'm not sure, but Sport, and 6 at least, the last 2 Gran Turismos. It's going to do a lot better than those two. Yeah. Yoda Soda. Hey there, Benji. My question to you regarding game sequels taking a long time to develop was pre-pandemic. Uncharted 4, for example, took 5 years. Sequels last decade took 2 to 3 years. Now it is taking 5 to 6. I'm curious why sequels take so much time to develop nowadays. Is it due to games' scale and scope being bigger than they used to in the early 2000s? Oh, yeah, that's definitely a factor. Definitely a factor. You know, nowadays, making a game is such an enormous undertaking. You know, you look back at, I mean, really even the 360 and PS3 generation, games weren't near as ambitious as they are now. You know, really Xbox One and PlayStation 4 generation took things to another level. And while games continue to look better, they do feel like evolutions of what we hit last gen. In a good way, right? A big evolution, but it feels like last gen we took a huge leap in terms of like performance captures, in terms of really pushing HD visuals beyond just, hey, 720p, but to really high fidelity visuals. Nowadays, if you're a big AAA game, I mean, look at how people tear apart games online on Twitter, zooming into every micro detail and being like, look at this game, it looks like trash. You know, gamers' expectations have become so high that people have to go all out, and it takes hundreds and hundreds of people to make these AAA games. I mean, it used to be, you know, you go back, you know, 15 to 20 years and you could make a game, a big game even for the time, with like 100 people or less. I mean, nowadays, a AAA game, I mean, you ain't doing it with 100 people or less, except for in rare circumstances. Not saying it's impossible, but that's by far the exception. Most of these games, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see games with 700 plus people on them. Some games even up to 1,000. They're just giant undertakings. So yeah, I think that's the main reason. Again, you should still theoretically be able to get sequels out faster once the pandemic's over than a new IP. But it's still going to take the days of getting a game sequel out in 2 or 3 years, for the most part, I think is over. I think 4 years should be the expectation for most games. Not all. Some teams can get it out in 3 years, especially if you have like a ton of resources and a ton of manpower. But for like, let's say a big open world game, I think people should expect like 4 years between them, right? Sometimes 3. I think we just had a beefy super chat here from Timmer, it looks like. Yeah, Timmer, thank you so much. Timmer with the 20. Holy cow, that's super kind of you, Timmer. That's a big one. Thank you so much, man. Thoughts on the RTS Xbox rumor from Special Nick? Apparently an RTS game from one of the ZeniMax studios. Yeah, this is fascinating. Would make sense given ZeniMax attempted to acquire Relic Entertainment back during the THQ auction in 2013. This is interesting, especially because it's not the sort of game that you expect from ZeniMax, right? They make a lot of games. They make, you know, first-person shooters like Wolfenstein. They've made horror games like Evil Within. One thing you don't really see from them is RTS. So that is really interesting. It makes you wonder what IP this is going to be. I don't think Special Nick said this is necessarily a new IP, though he might have. But that means if he didn't say that, it could be a Fallout RTS. Like, I could really see that working. Even an Elder Scrolls RTS could be pretty awesome. Look at what they've done with the Total War Warhammer games. So this is really fascinating. Yeah, and they have IP that it could work really well on, especially those two. I mean, a Fallout RTS or a Elder Scrolls RTS could be amazing. So we need to see. Again, I don't know if he said it's a new IP. And again, I don't think he did. I think he just said that there's an RTS games in the work. And it could be a new IP. But, yeah, I mean, those two IP would work amazing. Either one. I mean, like I said, look at Total War Warhammer for Elder Scrolls. That you could use that as kind of a template. Not the exact same, but kind of a template. Or Fallout. Either one works amazing. If it's a new IP, then who knows, right? Hard to guess. It could be anything. You could just make your brain up. But I would say if it's using one of their IPs, those would be my two guesses. I'm seeing Danger Man saying Doom. You could do Doom. I think they'd go with Fallout or Elder Scrolls before Doom. But you could do it. You could do Doom. It's not impossible. So yeah, that's super interesting. Super interesting. I'm excited to see what it is. And thank you for that super chat, Timmer. That's super kind of you. All right, I've got about 10 minutes left in the tank, and I got to go. Maybe 15, but I have to go to work today. So we're in the last like 10 to 15 minutes. Eddie Brock, I'm sorry I haven't been able to do like my normal hour and a half long streams that I normally used to do. But again, my work schedule is just not lining up right now. I'll be able to do some longer streams again, I'm sure, soon. But right now, I'm kind of squeezing in at an hour. Eddie Brock, Benji Boy. Do you think we should be worried that W Games might get sold off by their new parent company, Discovery? Or do you think they will keep them if the games are successful? Eddie, this is still a huge wild card to me. Huge wild card. I absolutely, to be honest with you, can see a scenario where Discovery wants to sell WB Games. I absolutely could see a scenario like that. At the same time, I could see them wanting to hold on to it. This is uncharted territory because literally new people are going to be at the helm. Like the leadership that's going to be in charge of WB and the WB Games and movie side is not the same people that were in charge before. So they're going to have different ways of thinking about these things. In fact, they've already said publicly how they have somewhat different plans with HBO Max than what we've seen in the past. I think we're going to see some big changes. So it's hard to say. Eddie, to me, this is literally a coin flip. I could see this going either way. I could see them staying with Discovery or being sold off. It's a total coin flip to me. What up, Red Dead series? Casual Gamer, I get asked this a lot, but I'll answer it really quick. Do you think PlayStation/Sony will jump into the acquisition war and buy a big publisher? How likely is that? Not impossible. I've said it before. If it happens, my expectation is it's either Ubisoft or Square Enix. Those two, to me, seem to have the most attractiveness without having a huge market cap. Again, you could throw someone like Capcom in there, but I think Capcom has no desire to sell, so I don't see Capcom going up for that. EA, I do not see any situation where that happens. Take-Two, I don't see any situation where that happens. So I wouldn't rank it as like the most likely thing, but if it were to happen, I would say probably Ubisoft or Square Enix, but I don't consider those either one to be like super likely. But those are the two I think you could probably zero in on if Sony was to buy one of them, or buy a publisher. Those are the two that kind of stand out to me as likely. Of the bunch, at least. Danger Man. Benji-Sales, is there a chance that Elden Ring could hit 20 million in a year? Yes. Yes, but we need to see how legs are. That is the big wild card. What I will say to you, Danger Man, is that the launch numbers look like a game that could sell 20 million. But we don't know how this thing's going to leg. Because like I said, clearly this has pulled in people at launch that do not normally buy a From Software game. Clearly, you don't hit these kind of numbers at launch, and you look at how Sekiro launched, you look at how Dark Souls franchise launched. This is an order way beyond those, like way beyond those. Keep in mind, just concurrent players on Steam. This is only one of the platforms. Just on Steam concurrent players, it hit a higher concurrent player count at launch than every single Dark Souls game and Sekiro's all-time peaks combined. So combined, then multiply that by 2. And it was still higher than that. So clearly, this thing's hitting numbers that a From game has never hit. So I would say, if most of these people, most of these new people that are buying in are getting hooked, yeah, it's launching like a game that could sell 20 million in a year if legs keep up. However, there is a chance. Oh, JCat saying 10 to 12 lifetime. Oh no, JCat. This is going to be at 10 million this month. I think it's going to be at 10 million this month. Like, I'm not joking. I think it's going to be at 10 million this month. So, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, its launch is colossal. We're looking at Steam alone is probably at 5 million sold right now. I'm not kidding you. Steam alone is probably close to 5 million units sold by now. And then with the data that we had out of the UK, I mean, and we haven't even seen US sales yet. Oh no, this will be this will be way over 5 million in its first week. Way over 5 million in its first week. Full week. If we're talking 7 days, it'll be over 5 million. So, who knows? Depends on how legs will be. If you had to make me bet on it, I would not bet that it will hit 20 million in a year, because I think I don't know this, I think it will be kind of front loaded compared to a lot of games. I have a feeling, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope it has amazing legs, but I have a feeling it might be kind of front loaded, especially if this thing hits close to 10 million in its first month, which is not unreasonable to expect at all, given the data we've seen. 7th biggest Steam launch in the history of the entire platform, and the biggest new IP launch in the UK since 2014. I mean, this is going to hit unbelievable numbers at launch. All right, I got to grab one or two more. What is up, JCat? Good to see you. This is a funny way to phrase it. Hammersley Ford. Oh my god. Okay, I'm sorry. This is cracking me up. Hammersley Ford. Thoughts on Babylon's Fall having less active players than a hentai puzzle game on Steam. Can't name a more iconic duo than Square Enix and flopping games. You just slaughtered me. I had no idea it has less concurrent players than a hentai puzzle game. That is amazing. Wow. Oh man, sorry. That cracked me up. Woo! Good one, Hammersley. I did not know that, but that's funny. Chris Jenkins, Benj, how different have these social metrics been for Elden Ring compared to other games and past From titles? I mean, it's record-breaking engagement. You know, I sent out a tweet about this, and I was like, it's crazy how From has completely dominated gaming social media. And, I had a few people reply, and they're like, oh, it's just because who you follow. I don't think people realize, like, the way I track this stuff, it's not about my feed. I search this stuff out. Like, I actively am trying to see what's blowing up on Twitter and things like that. It's not just who I follow. I look at all kinds of tweets of people I don't follow. Just type in Elden Ring and see what the top, the top on... You can do this with any game. Type in whatever a new game is in your search, filter it by top, and look at the likes and views and engagement that things are getting. And it's not always a one-to-one ratio, but it gives you a good idea if you start making comparisons, like how these games are tracking on social media. And I mean, Elden Ring has performed utterly colossal. The only thing recently I would say that compares to it is Pokemon Legends Arceus. You know, that also did ridiculous numbers on Twitter. And that's good company to be in, considering that thing sold like 6.5 million in 3 days. Yeah, I mean, Elden Ring's social media presence is unbelievable. The engagement it's getting is ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, dude, Suni Legend posted a GIF. I guess, I don't know if it was a GIF, but it was like a short video. Just Suni Legend's tweet. Just that. His little gameplay clip. Last I looked, 117,000 likes. You know how freaking big that is for a random gaming tweet about a video clip? I mean, that's huge. Very few games are putting up social metrics like that. And that was just Suni Legends. There's tons. Tons of tweets with over 20, 30, 40,000 likes. It's insane. It's insane. Like I said, Pokemon Legends Arceus was something similar, where you saw crazy engagement. Karen Hahn says, another month, another Nintendo Switch 2/Pro rumor. Agreed, except for this is like legit. Like, it's literally straight up a leak from their DLSS. And it basically has to be Switch 2 or Pro. I don't believe in a Pro anymore. I'm pretty sure this is a new generation. I think we're seeing the next generation Switch. I mean, it literally says NVN2. And it's literally just the name of the Switch's profile with a 2 on it. It's hard to imagine that being anything else. I normally agree, Kieran, it got out of control when it was just random. Here's a new Bloomberg report, and here's a new insider claiming this, and we've had that for years now. This is different. This is literally leaked from NVIDIA themselves, so we know we'll be making the architecture for the next Switch. So you can kind of take this to the bank. One thing to be clear about, though, we don't know that this is the finalized design. We just know that this is something that's being tested, which looks almost assuredly like it is a Nintendo Switch product given the name. But keep in mind, there's some numbers that are floating around there about the CUDA cores and things like this. We don't know that this is finalized. Things can still fluctuate, but we have a pretty good idea at least about what the basic architecture of the next Switch probably is. Yeah, we really do. Hummersley Ford, you are not into PC gaming. Are you going to get the Steam Deck? Might be a good place to start. Well, I want to get a new gaming PC. They're just so freaking expensive and I don't make very much money. Like, the PC I have right now that I'm streaming on, when I built it, it was a top-end PC. Nowadays it's not. But right now the PC I have, it has a 980 Ti in it, and it has an i7 4770K, which I know at the time now is not, this is by no means a top-end PC. But when I built it, it was a top-end PC. I want to have another high-end, top-end PC, but I mean, when you're an hourly, entry-level retail employee and you got a kid and all this, it gets a little hard, right, to justify going out and dropping $2,000 on a PC or more. So I hope to get a gaming PC. Right now I'm hoping next year I can build a new gaming rig, but I'm not going to get a Steam Deck, no. I like portables, but I'm not like a huge portable guy. And if I'm going to be playing portable, it's going to be my Switch. So I honestly think my Steam Deck would mostly just sit. So they are really cool, but I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on something I'm not going to use, probably except for in rare circumstances. But I do want a high-end PC, so maybe next year. All right, I'm going to take like 2 or 3 more and I got to go. Hanato SZFR. Sup, Benji? Playing Elden Ring and watching you. Good to be here. Well, thank you for being here. That's super nice. Andrew, we talked about this a bit on my last chat, so you can get more of my thoughts there if you look. But he asked, what do you think about Elden Ring's 97 score with all the technical issues? Andrew, my personal opinion is it's not a problem for me because at the end of the day, a review is only an opinion. So, but that is going to completely depend on how you look at reviews. For me, I would say it's one thing if it was as bad as something like Cyberpunk, where the game was quite literally unplayable on consoles. Like, literally in many ways, it was an unplayable mess on especially the last-gen consoles. Something like that is a bummer, except keep in mind reviewers didn't get a chance to play that version. Something with Elden Ring, yeah, there are some big issues like crashes and stuff, but it's not like everybody's getting those. The main issue is frame rate. Like, let's be honest, the main issue with the game is frame rate. The thing is not everyone cares about an amazing frame rate. They just don't. Some people do. Some people are like, I need that 60 FPS. I need good frame pacing. I need that to be locked. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also people, and I know people like this, that could not even tell you what a 30 FPS or 60 FPS means. Now, if you're in gaming media, I assume that you do. But I mean, for some people, they just don't really care about things like frame rate or having a 4K resolution. So I don't personally have any issue with it getting a 97 with frame rate issues, because clearly the reviewers felt that whatever shortcomings it had, what it does so well more than makes up for it. But on the flip side, I would also say, like I said last chat, if you're someone that doesn't agree with that and you're like, listen, I need a solid frame rate and this hurts my experience, so I wouldn't give this a 10 or a 9 or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that either. But I think people being like super salty about it, like, oh my god, this doesn't have locked 60 FPS. How could you give it a 10? Well, because the reviewer didn't really care that it wasn't a locked 60 FPS. So that's why. It's just going to come down to personal opinion. I don't really get caught up in reviews. I tweet about when a game gets good reviews, but I don't really my life doesn't depend on if a game gets a 70 Metacritic or a 100 Metacritic. There's a lot of games I love that are in the 70s, and there's some games that are like 10 out of 10s across the board, which I'm like, I mean, it was good, but it wasn't that good. It's all opinion. Can be. With chip shortages, Nintendo should push Switch successor for as long as possible, right? Can be. I thought the same, but now I'm wondering if this thing is 2023. I know I saw Jeff Grubb apparently said that he thinks that this is 2024, and I would have 1,000% agreed with him. In fact, I even made a tweet about it. Like, I thought the next Switch was 2024 after the 2022 release slate lineup that we saw, this year. But I don't know anymore. The fact that that's in the data set, I mean, that makes me wonder if this thing is planned for next year. If it was as far out as 2024, I'm not sure that would have been in the leak. Like, I just don't know if they would have had it in that DLSS source code already. I mean, maybe they would have. Maybe it would have already been there, even being out into 2024. That is definitely possible. But I don't know. The fact that it was there kind of makes me think this thing is targeting 2023. But we need to... I wouldn't lock that in yet, but... I don't know. It might be next year. It honestly might, which is a bit of a surprise, but it might be. All right, I'm going to end this in 3 minutes. So I'm getting the last ones here. I'm sorry that I can't get more questions in. I have hard outs right now. I can't stream that long right now. A lot of questions about Horizon. I think we've gone over that. Sounds PB7. Any data on how well the Cyberpunk 1.5 patch has gone over with fans? What did you make of the patch in terms of bringing the game to where it should have been? And can CD Projekt Red turn it around from here? Good news is it does feel like that Cyberpunk is finally in a solid state. I don't really see people talking bad about Cyberpunk anymore, which, I mean, it's been a while, but at least they've gotten to the point now where most times I see anyone tweeting about Cyberpunk right now, it's positive. That doesn't make up for how this game launched. It should never have launched in the state that it was. It should have never got pushed out the door when it did. But I do think, Silence PB7, I do think we're at a point now where the game feels like where it should have been at launch. So they at least are on an even footing to move forward with expansions and things like that, right? We did see it boost into the Steam sales. For the last 2 weeks, it's been in the Steam top 10. So it did have a positive impact on sales. I wouldn't say it led to a colossal increase in sales. This thing didn't hit number 1 on the Steam charts, but it did hit top 10 the last 2 weeks when the patch was out. So clearly it has had a nice impact. So I would just say that CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk itself are now in a solid position to start getting those expansions and DLCs and stuff like that out, right? Didn't make sense to get any of that out until you got the game where it needed to be. And it does at least finally feel like it's in that place. Prixim, hey Benji, do you think with Nintendo we'll consider the next Switch just another pillar of the Switch family? Possible. If so, are we looking at the PS2 potentially being dethroned in lifetime sales? That's the question, Prixim. How are they going to market whatever this machine that's in this leak is? That is the big debate. Are they going to call it a Switch 2? Are they going to call it a Pro? To me, Prixim, looking at this, if what we're seeing is the finalized unit. We don't know still a lot about the CPU. We don't really know anything about the RAM. There's still a lot of stuff we don't know, but we do actually, if this is the final thing, have a pretty good idea about the GPU. I believe that what's out there is it looks like it's going to be 1,500 CUDA cores. It looks like it has ray tracing. It looks like it has DLSS 2.2. If these things are in the final package, I think they'll call it a true successor because it is a generational leap. Like I said, the estimates that are out there is it could be 4 to 5, up to 5 times as powerful as the current Switch. That's a big jump. Like way bigger than just a Pro model in my mind would be, right? That would be, to me, a Pro model is something like maybe twice the processing power. I mean, if we're hitting up to 5 times the power, that feels like a true generational leap. So if what we're seeing is the finalized unit, it feels to me like it'll be a true new generation. But you never know, right? Maybe Nintendo will just market this as part of the Switch family, not a successor. It's just part of the overall It's so hard to say. It's so hard to say. But if it was just part of the Switch family, could it potentially dethrone PS2? It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. It is possible, yeah. All right, I'm going to take one more. One more question, and then I'm out. One MMA question and then one gaming question, because I haven't gotten an MMA question in a while, and I just got one, which I'm hyped for. I'll go with this, then I'll get a gaming question. Zinfamous. Hey, Benji. UFC 272 is tomorrow. Who do you have in Covington versus Masvidal? I wouldn't count out a Masvidal KO TKO win, but I think Colby most likely takes it by decision. Zinfamous, we literally are thinking identical. Right now, if I had to make a bet, someone's like, Benji, you got to put your money down on this fight, I would go the exact same. I would go Colby by decision. I really can't see Colby getting Masvidal out of there. Colby doesn't really have big punching power. He's just a grinder, an excellent one, but he's a grinder. He doesn't really, knock people out. And as we know, Masvidal is tough as heck. Like, yeah, Kamaru Usman one punch knocked him out, but first of all, that's Usman, who has ridiculous power. And second of all, like, that was the only time Masvidal's been KO'd like that in his entire career. For the most part, we've seen him be able to take punishment and damage very, very well, right? So if I had to bet on it, I would go Colby, utilizing his wrestling and pace and grinding to get a 5-round decision. But I think Masvidal has a better chance than some are giving him. I will say I think this will be a tough fight. I don't think either guy is going to come in there and just easily win this fight. It might start to look one-sided by the end if Colby is going to be the one who wins this. Like, maybe by the time we hit like rounds 4 and 5, this is pretty one-sided traffic. But I don't think that'll be the story of the whole fight. Like, I don't think Colby will just come out there and dominate him for 5 rounds. Or I don't think that Masvidal is going to come out there and knock him out in 10 seconds like he did, freaking Ben Askren. I think it's going to be a pretty tough fight either way. I'm picking Colby, but don't rule out Masvidal getting that KO. It is definitely possible. All right, last one. One gaming question, and I got to go. Logan Hardy. Hey, Benji, do you think even if Horizon broke The Last of Us 2's record, Sony is not announcing it because of the state of the world right now? It didn't. I'm sorry to tell you, Logan. It just didn't. They didn't even push GT7 hard this week. It just didn't, Logan. There's not a single market where the data looks like that. Not even one. I could maybe be sympathetic that it would break The Last of Us record if we saw a single data point that pointed towards it, but there's not even one thing that makes it look even close, to be honest. Not even close. So it just didn't happen. Now, maybe we didn't get the first 3 days sales because of Ukraine. That is possible, right? Maybe this thing did sell, close to 3 million units in 3 days. That is possible. And maybe that's why Sony didn't tell us. But specifically breaking The Last of Us 2, it just didn't happen. The only, literally, and I mean this, literally the only way that would be possible is if the US is a ginormous chunk of sales data. Like huge, like way overrepresenting what a game normally does percentage-wise in the US. That is the only possible thing that could happen for it to beat The Last of Us, and I just don't see that. So, The Last of Us record, it doesn't look like it came even close. 3 million, maybe. But yeah, hopefully we hear something good soon. All right, I'm out. I got to go. I'm sorry. I have to bounce. I wish I could stream longer. I literally have to go. I pushed it even longer than I should have today, but I got to go. Thanks, everyone, for the super chats. Thanks, everyone, for the questions. Thanks for all the support. As always, y'all are amazing. Like the video if you haven't already. Helps the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. We do one of these every single week. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already. Odds are 99% that you do if you're here, because chat wasn't that big today. So it's mostly my regulars here today. But in the small chance that you're not following me on Twitter, hit me with a follow on there. Otherwise, I will see you next week, right? I'll be back here for a chat next week, and I'll be on Twitter all day, every day. Stay safe, play some games. I'll catch you later, everybody, and have an amazing night, amazing day, wherever you are. Bye, bye, peace, peace, bye, bye.